Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. The Hindu Mahasabha wants to erect statues of Nathuram Godse in public places, markets and prominent junctions in 5 or 6 large cities. But have they forgotten that he was the murderer who assassinated the father of the nation? How then does the Mahasabha defend this appalling proposal, and what will be the government's response? That's the discussion in part 2. But first, for a 4th consecutive day, the Rajya Sabha was paralysed with the opposition and government locked in conflict. The issue in dispute was whether the opposition is right in demanding a statement from the Prime Minister on conversions, or whether another government minister could suffice. Meanwhile, governance and legislation is at a standstill, public funds are being wasted, and Parliament brought into disrepute. So in part 1, we ask who's right and who's wrong, or are both sides to blame for this unedifying situation? Joining me now to discuss the paralysis of Parliament is BJP MP Kirit Somaiya, Congress MP Rajiv Gowda, CPM MP Ritobrato Banerjee, BJD MP Jay Panda, and the executive editor of Headlines Today, Javed Ansari. Mr. Gowda, is it fitting and proper to paralyze the Rajya Sabha repeatedly? Surely in a country like India, legislation and governance are critical, and holding up the Rajya Sabha day after day is simply unacceptable.
Karan, we have had a very simple request of the government that the Prime Minister comes to Parliament and listens to the discussion on this very important issue about how the atmosphere outside in the country is being vitiated, and then proceeds to give the nation an assurance through the House that communal harmony will be maintained, that he will curb the rogue elements in his party and in his larger Sangh Parivar. We are asking him to do just that. And this is something that Prime Ministers of right from Nehru have always done. They have shown up in Parliament and they have addressed issues of national importance. Okay. They have responded to the opposition's demands. But is that too much to ask of this Prime Minister?
You know, Mr. Somaiya, as the opposition said in Parliament, it's the arrogance and obduracy of the government that is to blame. Why won't the Prime Minister make a statement on conversions, reassure Parliament, reassure the country, and end this standoff? By refusing to do so, you're responsible for holding up the functioning of the Rajya Sabha.
Karan, where is the question of arrogance? It is the issue which is important. There is the issue of whatever issue, whether it is the conversion or corruption. This government is always ready for debate and discussion. Now, tell me, the issue is important or opposition want a particular Prime Minister for a particular issue for a particular time is important. What is arrogant? In Lok Sabha is functioning perfectly. Not only perfectly, I can tell you, when you will find out at the end of the session, Lok Sabha's performance or debating will be more than 100%.
Okay.
What the government has announced, we are ready for any discussion on any issue, including conversion. The government has made statement. Home Minister is the most responsible and more person with the all authority. Let me then ready to participate, debate. Let me put your point. Prime Minister is coming to the session. At any time, Prime Minister is ready.
Let me, Mr. Somaiya, put your point to Ritobrata Banerjee of the CPM. You know, in a very real sense, that point made by Kirit Somaiya was made by Arun Jaitley as well. He pointed out in the Rajya Sabha today that the Lok Sabha is functioning perfectly normally, and the reason why, in fact, the Rajya Sabha isn't is because of what he called the arrogance of the opposition's numbers. Are you not using the fact that the government's in a minority and the opposition collectively in a majority to actually stymie the upper house?
No, not at all, Karan. As my colleague, Professor Rajiv Gowda had mentioned, I don't want to go into those points. I want to make another point. This is very vital. We have been mentioning that why the opposition is demanding the Prime Minister to be in the House to listen to the discussions of the different political parties, the leaders. We have said that the leaders will speak, let the Prime Minister hear, because this is such an important issue. I just want to make one most important point. We will remember on the morning following the swearing-in ceremony of the new government, the Rajya Sabha issued a press communique giving details of the allocation of the portfolios against the members of the Union Council of Ministers, as advised by the Honorable Prime Minister. Naturally, this list begins with the Prime Minister's responsibilities. Among various portfolios, the list includes all important policy issues. This is unusual because in the cabinet form of a government, individual ministers who have been allocated specific ministries take necessary decisions while the cabinet as a whole approves such decisions and the set of policies and programs that the government will pursue.
Okay.
This combines, Karan, just let me finish. This combines a democratic form of collective. And what we are telling, because it is up to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, as far as the Rashtrapati Bhavan communicates, he is responsible for all important policy matters. So such an important matter, issue of conversion, issue when the tolerance is being challenged in the country, where innumerable incidents are happening, and today is the third instance.
Okay.
Today was the 19th sitting of the Rajya Sabha in this session. Prime Minister came to the House. This was for the third time. Earlier it came once after the Niranjan Jyoti incident.
Let's keep it short, Ritubrata. You have a very good point to make when you say that the Prime Minister has allocated to himself all other important policy issues. Therefore, he has a duty, both moral and practical, to address this issue. You know, the truth is, Jayapanda, there are good arguments on both sides, and no one can deny it. But at the center is the functioning of the Rajya Sabha and the cost that the country is paying when it's held up. Parliament costs 2.5 lakhs a minute, that's 9 crore a day. Over 4 days, that comes to 36 crore, and the Rajya Sabha share is 18 crore. Is this sort of wastage of public money acceptable in a poor country? Because that's what the ordinary man is paying for. They are paying for the non-functioning of Parliament.
Karan, as you know, I have consistently over the years taken a stand that Parliament must function, it should not be disrupted, and I have maintained this stand whether my party has been in government or opposition. And indeed, my party today, although it is in the opposition, we are not in alliance with the government, nor do we hold any positions. We are not disrupting in either house because we think there are very important legislation that is waiting, that is crucial for the country, and that needs to be passed. Now, I agree with you, there are arguments on both sides, but I think some of the arguments are quite specious, because no one has answered yet why some people in the opposition are obstructing the Rajya Sabha but not the Lok Sabha. There is no credible answer. But if you go around Central Hall and ask unofficially, I think you will find many people in the opposition saying, look, they did it to us, now we should do it to them.
Okay.
I think the country is moving on beyond that, and I don't think that kind of a tactic in Parliament is going to be rewarded by the public. I think they need to re-look at this.
You know, you hear Jayapanda saying the country is moving beyond that, and there's no doubt that many people fear that this standoff in the Rajya Sabha is going to bring Parliament into disrepute, it's going to damage our democracy. But I put it to you, aren't the people of India now so used to seeing Parliament not functioning, to seeing hangama when it is so-called functioning, that actually nothing can happen there that would disillusion them? They've probably written off Parliament in their estimation.
Well, absolutely, because and just look at the business that we are in. It hardly makes news when Parliament is disrupted. You know, we tend to take notice only when when they are in session. And the opposition, it's ironical, the government is putting forward all those arguments which the Congress used to when they were in power. It's this very government which opposed the land transfer to Bangladesh, which they are now, land transfer treaty to Bangladesh, which they are now very keen on. They stymied GST, they stymied land acquisition, they stymied insurance bill. Now they are very keen to do this, and it's all equally ironical that the Congress, which actually introduced this bill, is now
doing the opposite.
Is doing the opposite. So all political parties, or at least most political parties, are guilty of putting political interest before that of the nation.
You know, Kiretsumaya, the tutu meme that's carrying on in Parliament hides the fact that actually the party that is suffering and losing is your government, because it's your legislation that is stuck. Insurance and coal now don't look as if they're going to perhaps pass in this session. Surely the onus is on you to break this logjam. because you're suffering the most. And if it requires the Prime Minister to get off his high horse and come and address the Rajya Sabha and speak to them, then do it. Why has this become a prestige issue instead?
See, the current, what is the issue? It's not Prime Minister giving some time. Prime Minister is always ready, as I told you. He attends Lok Sabha also and Rajya Sabha also. And what you say, it pains us also. Now we have got so many issues. What has happened, you know, 2 days back in Pakistan, 100+ children were killed. The issue of terrorism, issue of insurance, issue of economy, everything, GST needed to be discussed and debated.
Precisely, you're arguing my point for me, Mr. Somaya. There are so many issues. You as a government can't afford Parliament being held up. Therefore, I put it to you again. Don't stand on prestige. Say to the Prime Minister, there is sometimes such a thing as stooping to conquer. Stoop to the Rajya Sabha, win their hearts, and get your legislation passed, rather than stand on your high horse, hold up Parliament, hold up your legislation, and look like a dysfunctional government.
That's what I was trying to tell you. Is it so, or is it the strategy? What your colleague has said, is it the strategy of paralysis? When Congress was in power, it was policy paralysis, and now it is the parliament paralysis. This is the strategy. Sometimes we get disturbed. In Lok Sabha, when Home Minister was not available, then also Congress said they let the Parliamentary Affairs Minister respond to this debate. This debate took place in Lok Sabha. The Parliamentary Affairs Minister had responded to try to understand. It is not what Congress wants. That conversion or corruption or economy or insurance or terrorism, they want to paralyze the Parliament. As in Rajya Sabha, we are less in number, they are able to do it.
You make a fair point. Let me put it to Rajiv Gada. You know, Mr. Gada, the truth is today the government agreed to a discussion under Rule 267, but said that the Home Minister would respond. You insisted the response had to come from the Prime Minister. Now, when the government is willing to debate and discuss, they're making time available for it, they're offering up a very senior government representative to respond. You're being obstructionist if your only objection is that it has to be the PM, not the HM, who responds.
Karan, the Prime Minister in his Independence Day speech made an address to the nation where he said we will have a 10-year moratorium on communal disturbances, on rhetoric of that sort. We asked him, when his minister made that really condemnable speech in Delhi, we asked him to come and either drop her from the ministry or find some way to explain to us how he would censure her. He came and made a statement. Then the House passed essentially a censure motion against that kind of an utterance, and essentially he promised us that none of this sort of thing would occur again in the future. What happened to that assurance? In 1 week, you find that, you know, in every corner of India, you find some other violation of his assurance. Does his word not matter with the Sangh Parivar? He is the biggest enemies of in his development agenda.
Mr. Gowda, have you forgotten when Dr. Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister and questions were being asked of him, of his ministers, he actually pleaded helplessness and said coalition compulsions prevented him from acting. Now, if your Prime Minister's helplessness didn't rankle with you, why is Mr. Modi's silence on an issue becoming such a problem that you hold up Parliament? You know, you've got to have the same standard, not two standards. It's simple, let's not become polemical. I want to bring Ritubrata Banerjee in at that point. Ritubrata Banerjee, does the opposition have a right to decide who will reply for the government? After all, the government is a collective entity. They have collective responsibility. Any minister can speak for the government, and if the Prime Minister has full faith in his Home Minister and wants the Home Minister to reply on the government's behalf, how can you object?
Yes, I want to come in on this point. I already mentioned that among various portfolios, the list included all important policy issues. This is unusual. Never has happened. In the cabinet form of government, individual ministers who must have specific ministries take necessary decisions, while the cabinet of the whole approves such decisions and policies of programs that to pursue. Now, this combines a democratic form of collective functioning with individual responsibilities assigned to each member of the cabinet. But in the Modi government, this is not happening. If the PM alone is responsible for all important policy issues, then clearly our system is being nudged towards the presidential form of government. This current Rajya Sabha impasse is a reflection of the furious unfolding of the Modi government's legal cocktail, selling grandiose illusions of prosperity to development while unleashing rabid communal polarization current. We have to remember that the government has already declared Christmas Day as a day of good governance. This is basically...
Let's not widen this into covering everything. Let's stick narrowly to the subject we're discussing. Otherwise, we lose focus completely, Mr. Banerjee. Jai Panda, there is a point being made there by Ritubrata Banerjee, which I want to put to you. Conversions is such a critical issue. And as he said a moment earlier, the Prime Minister has gifted to himself responsibility for all important policy issues, which gives him a sort of overriding position over his cabinet. Those two things taken together, is therefore this a subject of such critical importance that the Prime Minister has a special moral, perhaps even constitutional duty to address, and he can't give it to the Home Minister?
Look, using that very exact argument, it is clear that the issue of conversions and the government reaction to it, in fact, falls under the Home Ministry. So that very argument actually goes to the other side, that it ought to be the Home Minister to respond. But look, I read in the newspaper today that the Prime Minister has spoken on this issue internally at his party meetings, which has been reported that he has spelled out that his ministers and MPs ought not to cross the Lakshman Rekha on these issues and make intemperate statements. So perhaps he can come forward and...
He can, sorry,
yes, I think they're related. I think they're related. My point is this. What I can't understand is, today the Home Minister has given a statement to the media that once the discussion got underway, the Prime Minister, who was then present in the House, would intervene from time to time. So I don't know why that is not acceptable to some members of the opposition. Not only do they want the Prime Minister to speak on the issue, they seem to be wanting to say that only the Prime Minister and no one else ought to speak on that issue for the government.
Well, just a moment.
That doesn't make sense to me. Why
just a moment. We've got Rajiv Gowda listening to you. Rajiv Gowda, you're hearing Jai Panda say that the Home Minister said that once the discussion gets underway, the Prime Minister will intervene from time to time. And that clearly means that the Prime Minister will be addressing your concerns. Why is that not acceptable? Why does it only have to be the way you want it?
Where has the Home Minister made that statement? It must have been outside Parliament. Inside the Rajya Sabha, the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, multiple times said that only the Home Minister will respond. There was no problem. Mayawati ji stood up and asked the Prime Minister, just like you said, to not worry about his prestige, as if addressing Parliament is some lowering of prestige, to basically come and participate in this whole issue. And he did not respond. He sat there silently. The Prime Minister is not aware of the glorious traditions of parliamentary participation by Prime Ministers that have historically been established in India, and it needs to be constantly reminded, that this is not a privilege that he bestows on us. This is something that he owes us as a matter of routine.
Let me Mr. Karan, stop. I want to bring in Ritubrata Banerjee as well.
On the floor of the House.
I want to bring in Ritubrata on that point. Ritubrata Banerjee, Jai Panda has just said that the Home Minister made it clear that once the discussion gets underway, the Prime Minister will intervene from time to time. Why is that not sufficient to meet the purposes of the opposition? After all, you made a compelling case to say that given that he's allocated to himself all important policy issues, therefore he has a special responsibility to address the Rajya Sabha on this subject. Now that he's willing to do it in his way by intervening in the discussion, why is that not acceptable? Why does he have to be the end speaker, which is what you want? Let him answer, let him intervene the way he wants.
No, the question is not of intervening the way he wants. I have already mentioned today was the third occasion when the Honorable Prime Minister made it convenient to reach the House. He has been speaking outside the parliament. The simple demand of the opposition is, let him listen to such an important issue to the leaders of the opposition parties. Earlier he made
but Mr. Banerjee, he was sitting there for the first half of the Rajya Sabha today, and if the discussion had taken place, he would have been listening. It's because the discussion didn't take place that he eventually left. You're contradicting yourself.
No, not contradictory. The opposition wanted to listen to him and the opposition wanted him to answer. I have made my points earlier. The point is that earlier, after the Niranjan Jyoti incident, he made a statement in the House. After that, things are not stopping. Yogi Adityanath coming into fray, Shakshi Maharaj coming into fray. What is happening? This is unleashing of radical polarization throughout the country.
Let me put, I'm losing your voice over there, so I'm going to stop you because you're suddenly losing clarity. I'm going to put this to you, Javed Ansari. The BJP, even though you're not getting Mr. Somaiya to say so, are actually worried that what happened when the Prime Minister spoke during the Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti matter could happen again. At that time, he gave whatever assurance he thought he was willing to give. Parliament, he thought, would accept it. The Rajya Sabha didn't. It continued to be paralysed for 3 days more. Further demands were made, and only then was the issue resolved. And they're scared that if they now get him to speak, the same trap will be set for the PM. Is that a fair fear, or are the BJP exaggerating the probability?
You know, a way, there's a midway. A way could have been found out. Praful Patel, this morning, when this bedlam was happening in the House, he walked up to the Prime Minister and suggested, why don't you just get up and say that I'm prepared to listen. You know my views on the issue. I'm prepared to listen. My Home Minister will answer, and if there are other, if you're not satisfied, I'm very much here to answer. The Prime Minister seemed inclined, but then his other ministers, other senior ministers
like
around
who?
him, like the Parliamentary Affairs Minister and those sitting next to him, prevailed upon him.
Jaitley as well?
I do not know what Mr. Jaitley had to say, but certainly all the Mukhtar Abbas Naqvis and all the others who were around him just prevailed upon the Prime Minister. Now this was a chance, if it's not an ego issue, then this was a chance for the Prime Minister, if you're really concerned, to break the logjam. There is a precedence. Just look at the number of times the BJP and the BJD and all the others forced Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to come to the House and make statements even when he was not answerable.
Let's put that to you, Mr. Somaiya. Mr. Somaiya, you've just heard Javed Ansari, who's extremely well informed, point out that in fact Praful Patel in the Rajya Sabha walked up to the Prime Minister and suggested a very sensible via media. Stand up and say that you will be here right through the discussion. If the answer you get from the Home Minister is not satisfactory, I'll step in and do it. That was a solution that was used earlier. It seemed that the Prime Minister was ready to agree until his own ministers prevailed upon him not to. Doesn't that suggest that in fact those around the Prime Minister are taking a needlessly rigid position? They're forcing the PM himself to be rigid, and therefore the fault and the blame for holding up Parliament is yours. And therefore when the opposition says you're being arrogant, they're right. Not the PM, but the men around the PM are being arrogant on his behalf.
Let me clear once again, we respect the Parliament, we respect the feelings and the concern of opposition. But here the issue, what issue is there?
No.
Is it the conversion?
Mr. Somaiya, I gave you a specific instance to talk about. Praful Patel suggested via media it was acceptable to the PM until other ministers made the PM say no. Answer that. This was an opportunity to break the logjam and you rejected it. Answer that.
There cannot be a discussion on such a conditionality.
That is a very clear, we always respect. What try to understand, is that the intention of the opposition? Opposition means a particular opposition party. When I am giving you example in Lok Sabha, the similar thing happened.
The point.
And there,
I think you're embarrassed to know that this has been offered. Because I think you feel this is a sensible solution which your government was wrong to reject. Otherwise, you would answer what I'm asking you directly. You're not. You're evading. I'm giving you one last chance. Why did the Prime Minister refuse the solution offered by Praful Patel today?
I'm telling you, my Prime Minister is always listen the views of the opposition. or anybody
No,
in the
Mr.
country
Somaya,
on
I'm
all
not going to
the
continue
important
with you
issues,
because this is the
including
third time you're not
conversion and
answering.
corruption.
You're evading, you're filibustering. Maybe you don't know the answer to the question, and I concede that because you're also smiling, and I grant you that's a good-natured smile. I want to bring you in at that point, Jayapanda. You were teetering towards being more sympathetic to the government's position rather than the opposition's. Now you've heard Javed Ansari inform us of a very sensible via media proposed to the government by Praful Patel, which the Prime Minister, it seems, was initially willing to accept, but his advisors and ministers around him actually got him to say no. And I put it to you that, in fact, that was an error on the part of the government. Would you accept?
Perhaps not. You know, let me put it this way. What Praful Patel seems to have suggested, which I am hearing now from Javed Saab for the first time, seems to be exactly what the Home Minister has indicated in his statement to the media that the Prime Minister was willing to do, which was once the discussion got underway,
but there's a difference.
he would intervene to
but there's a
the
critical difference, Mr.
specific...
Panda. There's a critical difference. The Home Minister indicated it to the media outside the Rajya Sabha, and that was the point Mr. Gowda made earlier. This was being suggested to the Prime Minister inside the Rajya Sabha, and he seemed willing to accept inside the Rajya Sabha, but his mind was turned against it again inside the Rajya Sabha. That's the critical difference.